Hello. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for having me. It's such an honor for me to be on this panel with these fellow authors and with Ms. Garrett. And I just want to thank Lynn for having me, and also thank Lynn and Publishers Weekly for everything they do for books and for my book in particular. Authors, we need all the help we can get. So anyway, so it's great for me to be here, and Professor, it's really an honor for me to be here with Professor Esposito. He's been such an inspiration to me. When I first started learning about Islam from an academic perspective, from a scholarly perspective, I read about this professor from Georgetown, and I couldn't believe, this person who had written so much about Islam and spoke so favorably of Islam was not a Muslim himself. I was just amazed, because my experience growing up in the United States, the only people who spoke well of Muslims were other Muslims, and mainly my family members. So as far as I knew, I was not related to the professor, and he was not Muslim, so it was quite exciting for me and very empowering. So, as we talked about, I just recently published a book called Why I Am a Muslim. And here, maybe we should show it. This is my first book. And then this is that's my second book, and this is my first. And Professor Esposito is lucky that I don't think his publishers want to put his picture on the cover. But each of mine were like, oh, let's put you on the cover, And my poor sister got included on my first one, and so she's always like, I hate that picture. When will that book go away? Or at least come out with a cover without, her picture on it. But unfortunately, Imam Raouf and our pictures are captured forever in time on the covers. But I've been promoting my second book, and traveling a lot for that. And one of the things that, that when you're traveling, you call the airline to make travel arrangements, things, confirm reservations at hotels and whatnot. And so I'll call and I'll say, hi, I'm Asma Hasan, I'm calling to confirm. And they'll say, okay, let me look you up. Okay, Osama, we have you coming in on Wednesday and leaving on Friday. And I'll say, wait, hold on. My name's not Osama. Oh, okay, Osama, thanks very much. And I'll say, well, no, it's spelled ASMA. And particularly for airline reservations, I'm very sensitive on that one, because if your ID does not have the same name as your ticket, then you're in big trouble at airport security. Especially, I would imagine, if one of those names is Osama on the ticket or on the ID, and they don't match. So, I don't know where it comes from, but I think it just shows sort of how fixated our society is on 9/11. And it's natural. 9/11 was a tragic, horrible event. I think none of us will ever forget that day, and it's changed all of our lives. So I think it's natural for people, when they see ASMA, to want to pronounce it Osama. They just sort of can't help themselves. Even people I've known for years, will say, hi, Osama, at the Christmas party or whatever, and I'll say, I'm Asma. You should know. For us as American Muslims, I think that's one of our biggest challenges, is dealing with stereotypes, with preconceived notions, with attitudes. We deal with those daily as American Muslims. When I go to events to speak about my book, a lot, and usually it's non-Muslims, and so when I get there, the organizer often will not realize that I'm the speaker. They'll think that I'm just somebody coming to attend the event. And so when I introduce myself and say, oh, I'm the author, I'm the one here to speak. Really? Oh, you don't look like a Muslim. I wouldn't even have recognized you. And despite the fact that my, picture's on the cover, but I don't know what they're expecting. Maybe they haven't read the book. Maybe that's the problem. But I think people have this idea when they hear that a Muslim woman is coming. I think they expect somebody who's sort of covered from head to toe and has a heavy accent. Some people don't even know that I'm female. They can't tell by my name, so they're expecting a man. So they say, oh, had I known you were a woman, I wouldn't have asked you. I know Muslim women, don't like to do things, in public, and and that's just silly. Even women who cover, are very outgoing, and are not necessarily shy. Another problem that I face sometimes, or not a problem, but a similar sort of issue, when I go to speaking events, the organizer will say, it's so great for this community to have an Arab come here. I don't think anybody here knows any Arabs, and I'll say, well, oh yeah, I can set you up with an Arab, but I'm actually not Arab. I'm sorry to say. And I feel really bad because, this particular person feels like they're really reaching out and really making an effort. And as a Muslim, I want to embrace that, and I want to congratulate them and, give them positive reinforcement and say, that's good that you're trying to learn more about Muslims. But it's going to start now with learning that not all Muslims are Arabs. Actually, only about 20% of Muslims in the world and in the United States are Arab. Actually, majority of Muslims in the United States and in the world are South Asian and Asian descent, like me. So you deal with little, issues like that. And I think this naturally leads to the question, why do it? Why be a Muslim in America? Why not go live in Pakistan, where my parents are from, where I'm sure no one would call me Osama, no one would think that I was Arab. Why not just go there? Well, I personally feel that by being an American, it makes me a better Muslim. I think Imam Rauf, and I would agree on this, he talks about this in his book, that there are certain values that are important in Islam that are a part of American society also. And I'll let him talk about those, since I think he does a very good job of discussing them. For me, being an American and a Muslim gives me a chance to approach Islam from a fresh perspective, and not from the perspective of a Pakistani or from a cultural perspective, but sort of with a fresh start, because I'm growing up in the United States, I'm living in the United States, I'm away from sort of the cultural infrastructure, the sort of military-industrial complex that's behind the culture of Pakistan that affects how Pakistani Muslims interpret and practice Islam. And this happens in all Islamic countries. For every Muslim, there's a culture that's behind them that affects how they practice their Islam and how they interpret the Islam. And oftentimes it results in things that have nothing to do with Islam, and that we hear about in the media that we say, well, that's horrible. Why are they doing that? And it's important to remember that's not Islam telling them to do that. That's their own culture. I'm going to tell you a little story, a quick story. When my sister was getting married, which was a couple years ago, we were going to do a traditional South Asian wedding. And so, but being American, we had to make a program for the wedding. No one had really made a program for a South Asian wedding before. Usually it's sort of done haphazardly the day of the wedding, who's going to accompany the bride and whatever. And one of the important aspects about accompanying the bride is that she should be accompanied by other happily married ladies. And their good luck in marriage ideas will rub off on the bride. So they'll send her off into a happy marriage, and when they accompany her down the aisle to meet the groom. So my mom and I were working on the program because we had to send it to the printer at least a month in advance. And my mom said, who are the happily married ladies going to be? And I was like, well, what do you mean? Who are the happily married ladies? And she explained to me the tradition, the happily married ladies accompanying the bride. And I said, wait a second. Hold on. I've been to several South Asian weddings, and none of the women accompanying the bride have been happily married. I know this for a fact. I see them and I say, hey, that lady, she doesn't even talk to her husband. I didn't even know that lady had a husband because, she's never with him. So I was quite surprised, and I was actually very disturbed, because if you really believe in that superstition, then you're sort of dooming these brides to a bad marriage, because they're being accompanied by women who are actually badly married, not happily married. So, and my mom said, I said, how does this happen? My mom said, well, it all happens on the day of the wedding, and there's so much, craziness, and every woman wants to show off in front of the other women, and they all volunteer, whether they have a good marriage or not. No woman's like, no, that's okay. My marriage is bad. Don't pick me. Pick my friend. She has a great marriage. So I was very worried about this. So I said, well, I'm going to do some due diligence. I'm going to actually find some happily married women to accompany my sister. And it was hard work, but I managed to find 6 happily married women who were family friends, South Asian. They accompanied my sister down the aisle. They were in the program. And although it was tough, I can now go to bed at night and not, wake up, every morning thinking, oh my God, I sent my sister down the aisle with 6 horribly married women. So, I think things like that are fun. It's part of my culture as a South Asian. It's sort of entertaining and, makes life interesting. But I realized in doing all this and finding, the 6 happily married women, there was nothing in the Qur'an about this. There was nothing in the Qur'an that said, when you get married, when a woman gets married, she must have 6 other women with her who are happily married to bless her marriage as a good luck charm. There's nothing in the Qur'an about that. In fact, what the Qur'an says about marriage is sort of legalistic, that there must be a marriage contract, that both parties must agree, the husband and the wife. There's sort of nothing about, the rituals of the wedding. That's what comes from the culture. I realize that, there's a lot of things as Muslims that we do that I get from my own South Asian culture that has nothing to do with Islam. That's not in the Quran. And a lot of it's fun stuff that's neat and interesting, like the happily married ladies. But a lot of it's also things that are negative that we see about on TV, like female circumcision, honor killings, patriarchy against women. These things are much older than Islam, and they existed much longer before Islam ever came into existence. Islam is about 1,400 years old, which I know is, seems like a long time, and it is, but it's in terms of culture and the way cultures are and the practices people have, it's not a very long time. There's so many traditions and practices that have been with the people who later converted to Islam, and one of them is this, happily married ladies in South Asia. For all of you, next time you see something on television and it's a Muslim doing something, sit back and ask yourself, is that in the Quran? Is the Quran telling them to do that? Or is that something that's a part of their culture that they're just sort of acting out on? I think that as an American, as a Muslim, that I'm very lucky because I'm sort of freed from that cultural baggage in the sense that I can subscribe to it, or if I want to, I don't have to. Whereas if I grew up in Pakistan, all those things would be sort of mandatory. No one would question the happily married ladies at all, and just sort of be standard. At least now I'm free to sort of say, when I get married, I don't want to have the traditional South Asian wedding. I want to have, my own. I make up my own culture or have an American-style wedding. I do say, though, that if I do decide to have a South Asian wedding, I'm going to have 6 happily married career women accompany me. So I imagine this will be even tougher than finding the 6 happily married ladies. I think I'm going to broaden the search outside of the South Asian community. So if you'd like to volunteer for that position, and let's all be honest, ladies, you don't want to doom me to a bad marriage and bad career. So I always say that that's what I'll do if I choose to have a South Asian wedding. But thank you very much for coming. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope you all pick up one of my books that are sitting outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma.